My name is Bree Dusseault. I work at the Center on Reinventing Public Education, or CERPI. If you want to talk about AI, this is the room to be in. If not, hang out with us still. We'll be talking about a lot of stuff besides just AI. But we've got a great set of panelists here. We've got Oliver Sicat, CEO and founder of Ednovate public school, or Ednovate schools, and Aaron Cuny, founder of AI for Equity, and Angel Rivera, superintendent of Mesquite Independent School District, which is in the Dallas area of Texas. So rockstar folks, these are three leaders who have started, early adopters who have started piloting and testing and using AI in different ways. Given the fact that AI is generally underutilized right now in K-12, the purpose of today's session is to get us some talk time to learn from these folks who are using it in different ways to give you ideas to hopefully catalyze transformational work you may want to do at your own organizations or schools. Before we get into the conversation, though, we thought we'd do a quick scan of the room to see who all is here. So if you can scan the QR code, it'll take you to a Slido poll. If you can't get it, just go to slido.com and type in the code there, just 3764250. And I'll give us just 30 seconds to a minute just to get logged in. We're going to be using this tool over the course of this next hour, so if you want to be engaged or engage with us, it's worth your time grabbing it. And if you have inputted, just give me a thumbs up so I can scan and kind of get a sense of how we're moving through. Thank you. It's fun to get thumbs up in real life. It's rare, actually. Awesome. And if you're just joining us, thanks so much for coming. We recommend that you just join, grab the QR code on Slido. All right, so interesting so far, who's in the room is, because I think we've got a couple. We've got the most are folks whose work directly supports school districts and networks, funders and ed tech, fewer on the school leader educator front. So that'll help us shape the kind of level at which we fly in responding to your questions. Let me take us to the next question. What best characterizes your perspective? Do you possess a clear vision? Are you generally optimistic, more curious, generally skeptical, or truly concerned? All answers are good. Awesome. Okay. It looks like we've got actually a pretty good range. And I would invite those who are in the minority, concerned or skeptical, weigh in with questions so we can hear your voices too. We're going to be talking with folks who are piloting and doing this work, but please make sure that if you've got stuff we need to know about, we hear it. All right, last question for this burst of questions. What would you most like to get out of this session? Just a few words or a phrase is fine. It'll just give us a conceptual guide as we dive in. And for folks who are coming in, as you get settled in, if you'd like, feel free to join our Slido dialogue. We're going to be using it over the course of the session. Insights, learning curve ideas, get an idea where to start, change management. How are others using AI? Real talk, thank you. Okay, we got it. Meeting great teachers, reassurance, ethics, greatest opportunity. Okay. There's a lot in here around starting it up, ideas, some specifics, tools, marginalized communities, real honest conversation. Okay. This is a great way to start. So I am going to kick us off with some framing, and then we'll move into a panel. Throughout, we're going to be getting questions and thoughts from you, so know that we will not be sitting up here just talking the whole time. But let me just lay the landscape before we dive into hearing from our panelists. I research AI in education at SERPI. We do a lot of different work around AI. We look at state policy and guidance. We won't be talking about that a lot here unless you've got questions on it as relates to their work. We also look at systemic adoption. That's what I'm going to talk to you about in just a moment. We look at educator adoption, so actually educators who are doing pilots in their classrooms. And we've also looked at higher ed and what role they are or are not playing in equipping teachers and teachers' colleges in particular to know how to use AI. We also run convenings with heterogeneous groups of different leaders. We have a newsletter. We've got research partnerships with Stanford and Rand and Mathematica underway. So we've got a lot of stuff going on. Today, what I want to show you is just some high-level findings that we got after a year of interviewing and surveying early adopter system leaders. So we looked at superintendents, cabinets, level leaders in charter management organizations and public school districts. All of the folks up here were part of that study. It was a broad study of about 80 districts and CMOs, and we asked them what they were doing. And the reason why we looked at systemic adoption is we wanted to understand how systems are being proactive to anticipate and navigate around the inherent inequities that often arise with ad hoc innovation. So we were very curious to know what they were doing. Here's what we found, and I'm just going to move through these quickly. What we found is that early adopters are piloting AI in a lot of different ways. It can solve a lot of different problems, so there's a wide range of ways to use it. Most are using it in this last year on teacher-focused problems, not student-centered problems per se. There are a few early adopters who are actually reimagining what schooling can look like, which we were pleasantly surprised to see because generative AI has kind of come into the mainstream so recently. But most are pretty early in their adoption stages. They're making steady progress. It's tiring. There are some real barriers, uneven state policy guidance, the uncertainty, a lot of legal uncertainty, ed tech overwhelm, and limited resources and support. And we actually did look at this through the lens of change management. A lot of the behaviors track to what you know about any change management work, but there is a novelty around this technology that does feel a little bit unique in that none of us grew up with this technology, used it as students, teachers, or system leaders, and that lack of adult awareness or capacity as a starting point is a little bit unique in driving some different systems change dynamics. And then we generally found that these issues could be aided or averted with a lot of leadership support and cohort training programs. We've got someone up here to talk about that, so there are some ways to mitigate that. We also heard some vulnerabilities. One is just there's not a lot of evidence about what and whether and how AI is working. We really need more work to build tools that can prove their effectiveness, especially with marginalized and historically underserved communities. Second, we didn't spend a lot of time on this, but it's still a little bit unclear how parents are being brought into the equation, who also are learning their AI literacy and also could become a political vulnerability or viability if they're not brought in. And then this idea of using AI to stay within the same box and just do it better seems to be where most systems are at. Moving into transforming a lot of the inherent inequities within the broader education system seems to still be on the horizon. And I think that makes sense because we're still pretty early into learning about AI, but that is where folks are at. And then the last thing I'll say is that AI tools are great, but applied in an ad hoc fashion or if built onto a already struggling delivery system doesn't solve those problems. They just continue them. So in summary, what we found is that AI adoption is limited and aspirational, but it is there, and it's actually progressing at a relatively deep and fast clip, especially for some of the most farthest along early adopters we're going to hear from, and there's a lot of potential, but it does require proactive investment in the ecosystem and the marketplace for it to realize its potential. All right, let me just show you a little bit on the landscape, and then I'll wrap up. Out of our early adopters, we found that 80% fell in the emerging ranges. We would call them dabblers or emerging users. And these are systems that might be starting a pilot, making a list of recommended tools, maybe looking at piloting or applying a tool across their system or a set of schools, but not anything systemic. Then there were some who were systemic adopters who actually were taking AI and plugging it into their strategic plan or reshaping their strategic plan or profile of a graduate to reimagine. And then there were just a few who were actually reimagining what schooling could look like and seeing AI as a tool to do that. And just to go a little bit deeper, here's an example of a system changer. These are two that are not up here because we'll hear from them. But there's a system that we heard from who is reimagining their whole learning system through competency-based learning, and they're using AI to drive the tool building and the complexity of that work. And they also have created some bots to help teachers do that and navigate that work. And then there's a reimaginer we spoke with who had a history of using AI. They embed AI learning tools into all of their students' instructional experiences. They have a micro school experience, apprenticeships, and they're launching a hybrid high school this year. So those are kind of the farthest out. Critical enablers, we'll track to what you know about change management. Really clear vision, really clear leadership, especially at the superintendent or CEO level, which builds a culture of innovation. Broad AI literacy strategies for all staff, not just educators in the building. Integrated tech departments, so the chief technology officer has a big leadership role in many of the systems we spoke with, and then just a tech system that has been successful in the past. So some infrastructure and some successful rollouts. All right, that wraps up kind of the landscape of what we heard. As we get ready for the panel, let me just give you one more opportunity to weigh in on the Slido before we dive in. Curious if I could just capture anything that resonates or a question that you may have. And again, just phrases or a word is great. We're just gonna do this for like 30 seconds. And if you're joining us, welcome. There are some seats up here in the front, and we are gonna be using Slido throughout, so feel free to grab the QR code. Overwhelming. Indeed. Great, we've done our job to put the ambiguous mystery so we can actually distill examples with these guys. Opportunity, what's the why? Reimagining, change management. Yep, the parent's point is so important. Yes, vulnerability. Figuring that out, we'll hear some ways that some of these folks are trying to up here figure out and mitigate that vulnerability. Yeah, and I will say, I think on the connections to evolving labor market, so tools, I would actually say just really quick so I can answer this, there actually are a lot of tools for students out there, and if you're in the system, you're inundated with marketing efforts. It's actually that systems are not choosing them because they're nervous about data privacy, or they feel like the first step is to get their teachers on board. Now, whether these are good tools or not, we don't know. Okay, this is great. I'll keep this up for just a minute to collect any more responses if you're putting them in, but we are going to move to our panel. So I'm going to sit down now and just ask our guests up here to introduce yourselves, tell us something, give us just a quick snapshot of what AI looks like in your system, and just tell us what some of the emerging ways that you see leadership play into your work at each of your organizations. Let's start with Oliver. Yeah.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Oliver Sicat, CEO of Ednovate Charter Schools in Southern California, all high schools in LA and in Orange County. The three of us did put together a historical song about AI to perform to you today, but they already did it this morning, so we're just going to do a normal panel. I think when it comes to leadership, I think leadership has a possibility to make sure that your district or your charter network doesn't just dabble in AI, but it uses AI strategically. For us at Ednovate, we are not pursuing AI. We are pursuing outstanding student outcomes. And AI is just one of the many ways that we get there. We do think that there's a lot of promise to that. For example, this is our third year now working with AI more strategically, and the leader has a role to choose strategic levers because there's many ways you can apply AI. But we chose 3 levers for next year. And we thought about what are the bottlenecks in education to prevent us from getting those outcomes. The first one is grade level content and curriculum in front of every kids every single day. What tools can help us do that? The second one is teachers don't talk so much. Students talk more. What tools will help us do that? And the third one is frequent, informal, low stakes testing so that we have data to inform that. We are narrowing all of our searches for AI in those 3 areas for next year, and we have a way to measure that with third-party data to see growth, and we could share more about that. But I think as a leader, our role is to make sure that they are strategically used in the outcomes that you want and not just used for fun or because it's the next new thing.
Thanks, Oliver. My name is Aaron. I lead AI for Equity, which is a nonprofit that supports innovative charter and district leaders who are committed to serving students furthest from opportunity. We act as a research arm on behalf of our partners, develop a bunch of implementation resources, and facilitate communities of practice. Our work spans the strategic to the technical, everything from adult work streams, student tools, and student AI literacy. So I think as probably most of you appreciate, we're seeing AI show up everywhere from students to the C-suite. We think it's critically important that we are listening to and learning from all of the stakeholders in our community as it relates to their experiences. And we see system leaders as the key leverage points for whether AI gets scaled in a way that capitalizes on the opportunity and minimizes the risk. A teacher can have an idea about an innovative AI use case, but it's leaders who are going to make sure that that's getting scaled in a strategic way. I think, as Oliver just spoke to, leaders are the ones making decisions about whether an idea becomes a pilot that gets organizational resources, whether that pilot gets scaled, leaders making decisions about enterprise system adoptions. They're making decisions about resource allocation towards AI, financial resources, but also human capital. Is AI showing up in the org chart, and how time is a resource? Is AI something that is getting time on the leadership agenda? Is it getting time in teacher and staff trainings? And so we really think that great leadership around AI is showing up in the work that really exemplary CEOs and leaders lead in other areas. So they're driving culture, they're setting strategy, they're making sure that resources are prioritized around goals, they're recognizing where there is success, they're holding folks accountable. That's great leadership, and so the folks that we see succeeding with this the best amongst our partners are just taking great leadership best practice and making sure that there's an AI lens that's coming to that. I just met Angel today, so I can't speak to his leadership, but we've been a partner of Ednovate's for almost 2 years now. I've been able to track Oliver's leadership on this topic, and all of those things that I just mentioned, I think Oliver's a wonderful example of. I also think we can take some cues from the private sector. Just out of curiosity, show of hands for those of you who saw the recent Shopify CEO memo around AI that went viral. A few of you. So this was maybe a month ago. There was a viral memo from the Shopify CEO that I think took a really convicted stance around AI leadership. That was followed by a memo from the Box CEO and the Duolingo CEO. I encourage you all of you to go out and read those memos. We are not creating products or services. We are serving kids and families, and so the school leader or the superintendent version of that memo is probably going to look a little bit different, but I think those provide compelling examples of what convicted AI leadership looks like.
Well, good morning, and thank you for attending our session today. I'm going to change my answer a little bit, looking at the responses that were there. I'm a superintendent of Mesquite ISD, 37,500 students in the South Dallas area. And some of the things that I saw by the attendees is like there were 0 systems leaders. There was a lot of people that supported systems leaders. But there was somebody wanted us to answer in terms of marginalized communities. They wanted real talk, and they were overwhelmed. So welcome to the club. The conversation this morning started about courageous leadership, and I can't think of a better topic in terms of AI integration when it comes to courageous leadership. So those of you that are overwhelmed, each community has a need, and Aaron queued it up for me very well. Their use case. There is so much AI out there to solve X, Y, and Z, but you have to have a use case that serves your community. Our use case for Mesquite ISD was we wanted to understand the passion of our learners. Why? If we know their passion, we can target the instruction, because the standards would always be the standards, to address that passion to drive what? Student results, right? Like we were talking about early here. So we developed our own AI system that captures the data and actually gives a student profile, not a static student profile, but a dynamic student profile, because many of us here, what we were interested in fourth grade was not the same thing we were interested or passionate about and when we went to high school. So that changes and evolves. And what a better way for me as a teacher, because I'm still a teacher at heart, to get my 7th grade class, my 150 students, and I already know what their interests are, what their passions are, and it helped me create lessons that can address those. Even assessments, you can have an assessment to get data based on my interest. Aaron, different interests, our tests look completely different, but the standards that were tested on are the same. And that's our use case, and we'll talk a little bit more as we move forward throughout.
That's great. As you all can see, these are really powerful leaders. This is framing up the role of leadership. It is not accidental that these 3 folks are speaking to the ways that they lead. What I want to do now is shift us into a second component or enabler of this work, which is culture building and the ways that organizations must build culture around this, especially given its novelty. And as we put up the fact, honestly, there are a lot more skeptics than those of us in the room in the real world. And there's a reason to be skeptical. So I'd love to kind of ask each of you in a different order to weigh in on how you've built culture. And I want to start with Aaron, because Aaron's organization is a catalyst for this work. The number one finding we got out of our research was that you have to start with adult AI literacy building, and cohorts and learning groups are the way to do that. Almost every single system that we found through national searches had been in a cohort, and that's why they were able to talk to us. And so I'd love to start with Aaron about what you're seeing about culture building and how you see that shaping the work ahead.
Thanks, Bree. I think for the most part, school districts and CMOs have not evolved over the past decades to be bastions of R&D. They have not institutionalized capacity to keep track of fast-moving trends like we have with AI. I think additionally, our most successful school networks in general, this is not true across the board, but I think our most successful school networks have become places where frontline staff are tasked with executing with fidelity on a really clear leadership vision. And diverging from that is a challenge and a problem. I don't think that has to entirely change in the age of AI, but I do think that in the age of AI, if we are not creating a culture where our frontline staff can see a challenge and see a problem, can build with AI to address that challenge, where they are encouraged to do that, then we are going to lose some of our most talented folks in the sector. A classic example of this from the business sector is Wozniak, Steve Wozniak from Hewlett-Packard. So he pitched to Hewlett-Packard an early idea for the personal computer 5 times. 5 times he was rejected. He left, co-founded Apple with Steve Jobs, and now you've all got MacBooks and iPhones in your pocket. That was someone who had an innovative idea. The organization did not receive it, and they lost that talent and that opportunity. And so I think a huge cultural challenge that our school networks and districts are going to have to take on over the coming years is how they hit this sweet spot of nurturing frontline innovation with AI without letting folks just run wild with AI in a way that might involve jeopardizing student data privacy policy or involve trying things that are real divergent from organizational coherence and strategy. So I think the answer to this and what we see working best with some of our partners are a few things. One, where we see this happening well, school networks are creating outlets for staff to exercise those creative juices, to innovate within an enterprise system that provides that data privacy protection and that gives administrators visibility into what's happening. We're seeing the places that are leading on this issue move away from looking at big product or tool procurement decisions as an all or nothing thing. And they're getting really intentional about thinking about phased piloting. It should not be the case that a large district goes from not using something to signing a big contract and having everyone in the district use that. That is just a horrible way, I think, to approach innovation in the age of AI. What we are seeing folks do is thinking about these phased pilots. We like to use the term MVP, not minimally viable product, but minimally viable pilot. And so we're seeing some of our innovators do that and just lowering the stakes, de-risking the initial innovation and exploration of tools and products. But I think in doing that, districts and networks are going to have to get really clear about what are the conditions that allow an idea or a product to become a pilot. What are the conditions and the success criteria that are being tracked that are going to be the driver of whether a pilot gets scaled more broadly across a building or more broadly across a network. And I think doing that at the scale that is going to be necessary in the coming years, cultivating innovation in a way that still has guardrails, is going to be new territory for many of our districts and leaders in the coming years.
Thanks so much, Aaron. That actually tees us up greatly. I want to now bring Oliver and Angel into the conversation. Start with Oliver. Would love to hear from you all on how you are kind of lowering the stakes on effective innovation. And Oliver, your work is focused on pilots and measuring progress. I think it'd be great for folks to hear about that. And Angel, you are navigating a district with 37,000 students in a state that has provided no guidance and no formal resources. And so would love for you to weigh in at the high level. And this is where we're going to start to get into some real examples that hopefully can inform how you're thinking about the work.
Yep. I would just double stamp a lot what Aaron just said. The first thing I think as leaders is that we need to take away the fear of using tools that might be detrimental to kids, and we need to give them permission to feel like that they can do it. I hear this a lot from my staff, and our organization's name is Ednovate. So for the last 10 years, 12 years, we've had to learn how to do innovative cycles throughout our organization. And those two things, whether it's AI or one-to-one computing or any online tool, it's always those two things. Reduce fear and give permission. And as a leader, the first thing I can do to reduce fear for my organization is I have to learn a ton about it myself. I took 2 years at a MIT EDX class learning about AI just structurally and the fundamentals of it so I can understand how it works. Then I took a couple of business classes on AI applications from this. And that just helped me gain a lot of comfort because I think your people can feel you if you're comfortable or not with this technology. So like it starts with the leader and understanding this a lot first. Then the second thing is that's where the guidelines come in. We just thought we are going to pilot this. It's going to be messy. Here are our guardrails. We established those. And then we said, and yes, we want you to use it. And if you fail, that is okay. And we had to give them that permission after saying don't upload personal information and all of those things. Like we had to say like that is okay. And so then we were public about pilots for two years ago. We said, let's go try TeachFX and Magic School and Play Lab, and let's look at the data and understand what's working for us or what's not. We had 10-week pilot innovation cycles, hypothesis, testing, and sharing the results. We did that every quarter. And then we learned 2 years ago that the technology was changing a little too fast, and it wasn't worth making a big bet on any technology at that time. So let's go bet on 2 infrastructure plays last year, same cycles. We chose Conmigo, and we chose just Gemini because that integrates with our workplace. And we tested those two things. What we also added in that layer to make sure that we are validating it with third-party measures is we used our iReady STAR test, and we had a control group of students who were using Conmigo and staff that were using Conmigo with students that weren't. And we're almost done at the end of the year, we have some assumptions on what works and what doesn't, and we were surprised by some of the results. And I know that there's probably investors in this room for some of those, so I won't share those results now, but we were surprised by them. Some things that we thought would work did not work, and some things that didn't. But more importantly than the tool itself, the barrier to us, which we'll talk a little bit more later, is adoption. And I think that that's the other piece that we have to figure out, which I know that we'll get to in this, but those are the things I would think about. How do you reduce fear? How do you give people permission? That's the culture you want to create, and you want to measure it by third-party results.
All right, so I'm not going to repeat what Aaron and Oliver mentioned, so I'll cover the gaps in there. So one of the things as a systems leader that you have to understand that one of the most difficult things to change is mindset. You can't change personality, you could affect mindset. But that mindset starts with the leader. And what they were talking about is setting those MVPs, or we call it exemplary zones, and measuring in those exemplary zones. But here's an important factor that you have to also do. When you're taking a chance on innovation, and you've worked on the mindset, you got the innovative program that you're going to use, put support around it. Because the one thing that we know about teachers, if they try it once and it doesn't work, what happens? It's done. You're done. So if you're expected to work before you collect the data, right, because you still got to collect the data and see if it actually works, you have to put supports around it. Now, I said in my previous statement, stick to your use case. It must be something that your district needs or your organization needs. Then support that use case, establish those zones, celebrate innovation. So when it's successful, we broadcast it out, give the people the credit, you take the blame. It's the way that it works in our organization. I'll explain to my board that was my idea if it doesn't work, but when it works, it was their idea and people love it because what it does, it causes them to take risks. And educators naturally are not risky folks. They're just not. They want to stick to what they know and what has worked for them for years. But, Henry Ford said, if I would have asked the people what they wanted, they would have told me they wanted faster horses. Education is one of the slowest, probably, fields of innovation because we've been pretty much doing what we've done for a long period of time. Unless you're an innovative leader, school probably looks the same way that it did when you went to school, however long that was. And the gap is pretty big, or the extent of time. So what we do is we set up those zones, and then somebody said, real talk, we went full-size scale the first time we launched. And guess what? It failed. Real talk. We had to put the toothpaste back in the tube and then say, apply it gently and start over again. But guess what? My board forgave us, our teachers forgave us, and our early adopters jumped on board, and then we started celebrating them. So, to recap, work on mindset, set up your use case, provide support around that use case so they feel safe, track your data, and then rinse and repeat.
So good. All right, we're going to shift now. We've been talking a lot about the tools and the ways that AI, we're seeing pilots and tools. Now I want to ask y'all a question about how AI is going to be changing the workforce. And Aaron mentioned there are memos coming out of CEOs saying I'm going to expect everyone in my organization to be AI literate. And, there's the latest stat I read, 30% of job descriptions now require AI literacy. The workforce is changing. And so what I'd love to ask you all is, what are the ways that you do or don't see curriculum, instruction, and learning standards shifting in reflection of a changing workforce, especially through an equity perspective? Tell us if there are any bright spots or examples where you're seeing this, or just generally what you feel is necessary in this moment where we're still in the gray zone of understanding what all this means. And anyone want to start?
Sure, I'll start. So in a state, and Bree has alluded, in a state that gives you zero guidance, absolutely no guidance whatsoever and no funding, we had to create what we called our principles of AI usage. And we created those in our district. And they're public. You can look them up, but there's nothing earth-shattering about it, right? We want to use the AI data, but still apply human values to it, because the teachers will say, well, AI is going to replace our jobs. And I tell them, no, AI is not going to replace your job, but I will tell you what is true. The teachers that know how to use AI will replace the ones that do not know how to use AI. And so one of the things that was up there about marginalized communities, right, we started with our parents. We really started with our parents, educating our parents. And full transparency, I'm an 88% free and reduced district, highly 80% economic disadvantaged. And so when it comes to equity, I can't think of a better platform to do this work in, because when our students leave our system, they're not just going to compete locally with others. They're going to compete globally. Our market now is globally. It's not just locally or even nationally. So what I say to our stakeholders, I'm here to prepare your students for a global market. And so one of the things that we've done is that we started working, last year we started preparing our third graders, all our third graders, to receive leadership training. Why? Because I argue that some people say, well, leadership is innate, and I argue that it isn't. Leadership has different levels. In the first level of leadership, it's leading self. And so if you can teach every third grader how to lead themselves, they're able to make better decisions, develop agency in their learning, be able to make decisions. But the second most important thing, other than leadership, is probably understanding the technology that we'll be facing in the future. And none of us here are prophets, neither are you, but I think we have a clear understanding that the jobs that will be for a third grader today when they graduate high school will definitely, you will need to understand AI to be able to function. So next year, our fourth graders will be dealing with technology infusion and AI literacy from the ground up, because we believe that if they understand these skills, they're able to do better in the world that they will come out to. And so you have to recruit your stakeholders to come along to ride with you, so they don't think it's something that's happening to them. It's something that they have input, and we've been challenged. We've been challenged with confidentiality, data breaching, all of those things. But we're able to answer their question, ease their tension, and bring them along the ride with us, because we want them to be equal partners in this. Ask us critical questions. We will answer them. We will not be defensive, and we'll move along.
Student AI literacy is my favorite topic these days. And if I was stepping back and doing the assessment of the progress that we're seeing across a range of AI work streams in school networks right now, I think we're seeing progress in how AI is getting leveraged within adult work streams. We're seeing some progress in the development of student-facing tools and some examples of how that's getting used in school networks. So I think that market is very early and very emergent, and a long way to go there. Where we have seen very, very little progress is the systematic incorporation of AI literacy into student instruction and the evolution of curriculum to account for the fact that today's sophomores, maybe today's juniors, are going to be graduating into a world where AGI or super intelligent AI is going to be leveraged in a range of ways in the vast majority of cognitive work that's happening. The progress on that front has been really slow. And I want to name 7 things very quickly that I think are underscoring why that progress has been slow and why we're going to continue to see a real challenge in moving student AI literacy work forward over the next few years. So one, we're asking leaders and teachers to move forward with something for which there is no historical body of evidence of best practice. We don't have the science of reading for student AI literacy implementation. We don't have many real-world exemplars of that. There are teachers that are doing this work well, that are scattered, across the country, but we don't have any real systemic examples that can be exemplars for folks to look to. We're asking folks to lead around AI literacy when, by and large, they've not had any training around that. There are some good examples of standalone AI literacy curricula that are out there, but that requires supplanting something else in the instructional schedule. That is a challenge. The high quality instructional materials that do reflect the bulk of instructional time have not evolved to reflect the age of AI. And then there's just the question of all of the time that has to go into introducing new curriculum. There's collaboration amongst the folks developing the curriculum, there's developing those resources, thinking about how it's getting measured, leader training time, teacher training time. There's a ton of time that's going to be involved in doing this well. And you know, the one thing that instructional leaders in our school systems don't have, it's time. If you want to see something crazy, look at the Outlook calendar or the Google calendar of the instructional leaders in our school systems. And lastly, and I think most important from an equity perspective, is the question of assessment and accountability systems. Folks that are serving schools of privileged populations don't really care too much about the assessment and the accountability systems. They don't have to stress that. But do you know who does? The folks for whom that is often existential, it's folks that are serving our students who are furthest from opportunity. And taking time on AI literacy or diverging from implementing high-quality instructional materials with fidelity seems like a divergence from the thing that they are being held accountable to. And so I think if we care about student AI literacy from an equity standpoint, we have got to quickly shift the system incentives that are there, that are driving what's happening in so many of our schools that are serving kids furthest from opportunity. I just want to quickly note, I saw Francis in the back of the room a moment ago. On an encouraging note, there was a White House executive order recently around AI literacy. And while there was some squabbling over the language of that, in general, I think this is an issue that's going to get bipartisan support, maybe one of the few things we'll see bipartisan support from in the coming years. In case you missed Francis's email a week ago, I just want to read a comment of hers. She said, "We agree with the premise that AI literacy matters, but doing it right requires investment and serious commitment to protecting student data, supporting educators, and funding the future we want." That resonates a lot. I'm going to pause here in the interest of time, but I think if we are going to move forward with AI literacy in schools, we've got to get to the root cause of why that progress has lagged and really address some of those things that I mentioned to make progress in the coming years.
I think one of the big goals for us is to change the economic outcomes of our kids, to get more than 75% of our students solidly into the middle class. And I do think that our students are usually on the outside looking in when it comes to technology. And we've spent the last 5 years asking employers, what do you need from students when they come to you so that if they do come to you, you know you would be confident in hiring them. In Orange County alone, there's 129,000 jobs that go unfulfilled by students who have a high school degree but not a college degree. And they are constantly outsourcing it from other places where our students are sitting right there. I went to an advanced manufacturing chip-making company just 2 weeks ago, and I asked them, what do you need our kids to do? And they had engineers and their CEO there, and they're like, have they done Photoshop yet? Have they done anything with like layering? Because that's all they need to know, and a little bit of Excel to be able to work in our organization and change their economic status. I went to another finance company, and they're like, do they have any, experience with Salesforce? Because if they have that, we can teach them stuff. And I think that we can talk about AI being in the gap, but it's not just AI. It's a lot of just software out there, lack of experience that our kids don't have that we're not training them for. Ryan Craig, who wrote a book about it and started Apprenticeships for America, said, if you just taught our kids Salesforce, Excel, and a few other enterprise-level softwares, they're going to have a $75,000 income without a college degree. And so, to me, not incorporating AI as a part of the lesson is not just about AI. It's just about our educational system not adapting to what the real world needs. And I think that that's something that we just need to focus on. And I would say the same thing with AI literacy. I think it's important. I think I overlooked it in real talk. I went right to the tools and didn't teach our students about how to be critical consumers of it. But to me, all AI literacy is how can we teach our students and our teachers to be critical consumers, to understand who's making this, what's their perspective, like what if this didn't happen? And that's all stuff that Ted Sizer taught us about 40, 50 years ago with critical thinking skills. It's just applied now with AI, and it was applied with the internet before. But I think that that kind of critical consumption is just really important for us, and I think that that's what's going to unlock us from a 20% student adoption to an 80% student adoption, which we are going to invest in next year as a systems leader. And then I would point out for all of you who are supporting systems leaders, we can't preach in our own backyard about this kind of stuff. So we need to bring in people who will teach AI literacy for us, because then they'll get adopted faster.
Excellent. If you're looking up, you'll notice that we've moved to the Q&A section. We've already got some great questions in here. I just want to give us a moment to upvote so we can just figure out which questions feel most relevant. Let me just scroll through and see. It looks like we've got a lot of questions. So realistically, we're probably going to get through 2 or 3, depending on how we monitor our responses and airtime. So let me give 10 more seconds to see what's coming up. Okay, let's start with one for Angel. Specifically, how will 4th graders in Mesquite use AI?
Okay, so in Texas, English is integrated through writing, and so one of the things that our teachers were really concerned about when it comes to AI is cheating, right? And I see a lot of head nodding. So what if you flipped the script, right? What if you flipped it? You had the student actually write the piece in the classroom. Just think about it. They actually write it. The teachers coach it, and they write it. And then you assign a homework to go home. Let's just say ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever. Upload your paper. Have AI give you feedback. Bring that feedback back to the classroom, and then have them integrate that feedback into the original piece that they wrote, with the teacher being present, so they can actually coach the student, because all AI generated answers or resources are not great to integrate, right? You got to verify some of the facts. You got to fact check. You got to ensure that it's got your voice. It's got what you intended to be. That's an example of how we're going to use in 4th grade, because writing is a huge piece of our 4th grade curriculum. Start leveraging AI. But the other thing that also it does, and it does it for all grade levels, it's not our system, which is called IO. Actually, when I log in and I see my son, he's a junior, it actually tells me my son is interested in. So as a 4th grader, you can start researching. I'll give you an example from my CTO son. He started putting all the things into our AI system, and it said, you might be interested in ice boat racing. Well, in Texas, I can guarantee you that we're not going to have any ice boat races anytime soon. So he said, what is that? So he started doing his own individual research on ice boat racing, came back, and after talking with the teacher about it, they had a good conversation about what ice boat racing was. He enjoys fishing and boating, but that was not one of the things he was. So it eliminates, just as well as attracts students to their interest, not based on only the teacher. When I was in school, it was only lawyer, policeman, engineer, doctor, nurse, and that's what our community was exposing us to. With AI, the possibilities are endless, and you can actually start looking, and it actually gives you, and it's not jobs, it's interest, because what I said before, we are not prophets. We're not going to know which jobs will be eliminated and which jobs will open as a frontier for students. But if we entitle them to choose their path, not their career, and that's how AI, not only in 4th grade, but 4th and beyond, because that's when students start getting exposure to career interests and pathways. It lets them be, remember when I said in 3rd grade about leadership, they lead their own pathway, because leaders self first, their agency, and they're able to tell the teacher, this is the way that I want to learn. What a beautiful day to live in when our students will tell us how they want to learn, and they guide their own educational journey.
Great. Let's do the next question. Over 50% of new teachers leave in 3 years. With teachers already stretched thin, how can schools help them embrace AI without adding to burnout? And Oliver, Aaron, got thoughts?
I'll just say quickly that the data that we're collecting from staff in our partner networks is very compelling. The teachers and staff are telling us generative AI is making me more productive, it's making me more creative, and somewhat surprisingly to me, we have really strong data that we think is a proxy for retention, where we have 60% of staff in a number of our networks saying the introduction of generative AI within my workflows is making me more excited about continuing work in the sector. And so that is already happening, I think, even as we are so early on in this work.
Yep, thanks. Let's see, that first question about 50% burnout, I think that this is a real opportunity. I think if 20% of teachers are leaving every year, 5 years from now, most teachers will be brand new. So I think someone had a low stakes question there. Like, I would start with new teachers, one, because it's not change management, and it's the first thing that they're doing. And if you do that over 5 years, you're gonna have most of your teachers now using this piece. So I think that that's a real strategy to consider for any kind of district leader. I see the thing on non-educational work as well too. We do a lot of this, and so from an HR standpoint, it's probably the easiest place for this, as you guys know. Job descriptions, rubrics, evaluating resumes can happen now in real time. It takes away the bias from your 25-year-old recruiter who's tired and went out last night, and now is evaluating resumes. You get real data real fast as a way to do that. It's now even gotten so much better where we're using it to source LinkedIn with those job descriptions to find people that match better and reach out on a frequent basis, and we get hit rates better. It's costing us a lot less on that. It can take notes on your interview process so that it's aligning to your rubric as well, so you're removing your own biases of what works for you, and it keeps that there. So I think that's pretty interesting from a finance level. Mainly for board reports is a huge one, both from writing it, from analyzing our financial statements, looking for patterns in the long run, finding cost efficiencies there. Our operations team has uploaded all of our receipts from the last 24 months and tried to identify patterns in purchasing so that we can get ahead of it in time. So there's a lot of operational efficiencies. I think that's the easiest and the safest way to enter. The teacher effectiveness or efficiency and burnout, I think, is also it. But the teacher outcomes is probably the area that I'm really most interested as well too. And so I think, if there's a level of hierarchy, I would start with operations and non-educational stuff. I would start with new teachers, and then I would think about student outcomes over time.
That's great. Really quick, are you good? Okay. Yeah, I want to move us through a couple more of these. I want to honor, I'm hoping this is from one of our more skeptical folks, so I said please weigh in. I want to ask this question of, I can see how AI helps adults better do their jobs, but the job of children is to grow and develop into their own self. How do you see AI affecting this? And let's take one or two responses.
So, show of hands did it. Anyone listen to or watch the Ezra Klein interview this week with Rebecca Winthrop? Quite a few hands up in the room. So I actually noted a comment that she made that I wanted to share here. So Rebecca Winthrop wrote this book, The Disengaged Teen. Fantastic interview with Ezra Klein. She said, I think we should make school a place where kids can actually interact with each other, develop human-to-human socialization capacities, because there's massive commercial tech the minute they leave the school that is vying for their attention. And we need to make sure to do some high-quality AI literacy. AI literacy is way different than using AI to learn. AI literacy is, what is this? How is it made? What are the risks? What are the benefits? And let's talk about what our ethics are around this new tool and how to incorporate it into our lives with an adult instructor talking about how it works and what it is. That's AI literacy, and that's important. I really believe that we can do both of those things well. The stuff that she first spoke to about valuing human-to-human relationships and positioning our kids with the understanding of how to understand, be a critical consumer of, and build with, have agency around this new technology. I think both of those domains are possible and necessary as we think about what our kids will need to succeed in the coming decades.
I'm curious if Angel, I've actually gotten to see the AI in elementary schools, and I've gotten to see fourth graders using AI at Mesquite. I know that one of the elements of your tool is the mood meter, and that you worked with your counseling department to create more human-to-human connection. So could you just quickly walk us through how that
Absolutely.
also...
So one of the things they do when they first come in, our AI tool, which is not a marketing, we developed it ourselves. it's first thing they do is they check in their mood. And so they can check a variety of moods. And if they have one that is not a positive mood, the AI will follow up and ask them some questions. Well, eventually through the questioning, if it gets to a part where they actually need a human to come in and intervene with them, the intervention counselor will get a message through our AI system, and they come in and actually have immediate intervention with the child. It's come pretty handy because we are able to get quicker, more efficient, and to get to the part where the student receives the help that they need. And so that's been very popular within our elementary schools. It's been one of the features that has been mostly used because we're able, the teacher just continue. Some teachers, are better than others with their empathy meter. But when the child is able to, and some children will not reflect it on the adult, but able to interact with the technology better because it's less threatening. And then the intervention counselor comes in, non-disruptively, removes the student and able to address the needs. I think it's been pretty great for us.
The other organization I'd recommend if you're curious about this question of the human side of AI is Michelle Culver's The Rhythm Project, and it's RITHM, like algorithm. She does a lot of research and work around this human-to-human aspect of AI. We're going to try to get through two more. I'm going to ask Oliver to answer one, and then I'm going to do a lightning round on the next. So just to prepare you guys, Oliver's going to tell us about, at its very best, what does an excellent AI-enabled classroom look like? And then I would love to do a quick, just like one-liner from each of you on what are the best low-stakes ways to begin, just something to get people starting to think about it. So Oliver, knowing that we're still figuring out what excellence means, what are you learning about a good AI-enabled classroom?
First, I just got to say this social piece of AI. Last night I wanted to ask my wife a question, but then I asked AI a question. And it responded so supportively, and it said, what an amazing question. And I realized that this tool is optimized to be our bedside manner person, but that's not real life. That's not, that AI is not gonna be tired. That AI is not, I may put something in a tone and it will take it a different way. And I think that's the messiness, that's the downside of this part. That it's optimizing for you. It's not optimizing for full social community connections. And so I just wanted to name that just because I was feeling that last night. And but I think in terms of, I don't know exactly what the best classroom AI usage would be, but here's what we're driving for. Students don't have to wait to get help. Teachers have the ability to teach at grade level and differentiate for each individual kid. We have some huge breakthroughs with the multilingual learners with AI this year, and statewide results just came out. And that means that our students who are reading at English in the first grade level, but another language at 8th grade level now have access to the content and curriculum and can perform in this level. So I think, to me, that those are the two things we're driving for. Students don't wait to get help, and teachers are creating materials so students can access the curriculum at the right rigorous level for the grade level.
Awesome. I'm going to move us into some key. Thanks. I'm going to move us into just some quick key takeaways that we surfaced prior to this. I actually think this answers one of the questions you all had put up there. One is if you're in the ecosystem, invest in leadership capacity building. We could also talk about other ways to build this broader ecosystem and marketplace if you're really curious on more details. And then for system leaders, creating this culture of innovation, small, low-risk AI experiments and rapid learning, and then really working with your senior instructional leaders to revise the curriculum. Before we go, and we're going to close out on a whip around, we want to give you space to give us your contact information if you want to know anything more. If you are interested in AI for Equity's 25-26 cohort, which is launching, I believe, this fall, if you're interested in talking to either of these two leaders about what it looks like on the ground, or if you're interested in talking with me more about the research, just give us your contact info and we will follow up. And while we're doing that, to close us out, curious for y'all's quick thoughts on if you were advising someone on how to start, what would you do to start this AI work?
I'll start real quick. Evaluate your systems. Teachers have a lot of things on their plate. You want a quick win? Take something off the plate. We had to look within ourselves. For, when you point the finger at someone, 3 fingers are pointing at you. We took a lot of assessments off the plate to the whole system and made one assessment because we were over-tasking our teachers with a lot of things, and we have to own that. take something off the plate, they'll be willing to pick up something else.
If the question is about how the audience can build their personal capacity around AI, start playing around. Talk to the best AI power user you know. We've leaned in a lot on short form video this year. We have a library of like 90 short demo videos of how you can leverage AI across a range of school-based work streams. If you send me a message on LinkedIn, I'll send you that video library. And this was not. I'm going to do that annoying thing that politicians do, where they use the question to make the point that they really want to make. If you are out there and you have influence over resource allocation as it relates to this work, we think that proportionally there's not enough resources going into the human capital side of the work. The AI EDUs, AI for Equities, leading educators can't train all teachers on AI in this country. The only way that this is going to scale is with a train the trainer model, and that has to mean investments in AI literacy capacity building work with school system leaders. That's the only way it's going to scale. So if you have influence over getting more resources to building the capacity of school system leaders to lead on this issue well, we'd be grateful.
I double stamp again Aaron's videos. 5 minutes, and you can watch them, and you can get a real insight into it. So AI for Equity, check it out. I think I would say, 1, learn yourself. 2, be very clear about the data that you want to see the impact on this. And then process map those functions that impact that and choose the right part of that process to apply an AI tool to it.
All right, there we've got it. The survey is up. It's off screen, so you can enter your information without everybody having to see it. I am going to close with Aaron referenced there is an executive order out there right now that will require systems to be doing AI-centered work. And I just want to name, like, as we leave this foundational conversation, to think about what that looks like when we have over 13,000 school districts and maybe 5 or 6 organizations that we're aware of that are really doing the training work. And to think about the different roles that we may need to play to shepherd this in so that systemic work gets done and does not broaden equity gaps, but actually builds bridges and transforms using the opportunities ahead. I think that's really going to be the stuff we're talking about in the next year or two. Thank you so much for sticking through this with us, sticking here for a whole hour. We really appreciate you, and come find us if you've got questions. Not Oliver, he's going to the airport because he came in just for this, but come find us if you have questions. Give us your information. We will follow up, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, guys.